Awesome. Hey, Abby.
Hi, Lisa.
So it's Abby Dione today, who was a recent member, is a member of the Full Circle Everest expedition team. So the first all-black team to climb Everest, which was successful this past year. So I'm super excited to have coached you and gotten you prepped for that climb, and then also just super excited about what that team means for climbing, just the presence that they had in the Himalaya and on the mountain this year. So big congrats to you for that.
Thank you. And thank you for all of your help.
Yeah, no, it was
pretty invaluable.
Thanks. It's my pleasure, honestly, to just help people kind of, well, I think that's one of the things I wanted to talk about. So you own a rock climbing gym in Florida.
That's correct.
So obviously, which is called Coral Cliffs. You have a super, super solid background in rock climbing. And correct me if I'm wrong, but this was the first like alpine climb that you had done. Like amazing.
I like to start small. So the way it went, I've been a rock climber and just recently signed with Adidas, so officially professional rock climber.
Woo-hoo.
Yeah, for the past 12 years. And I've owned the gym for about almost 11 of those years.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right. My background is in everything like 3,000 feet and below. And if I did do any alpine climbing, it would actually be bouldering at 10,000 feet in Rocky Mountain National Park. So I still wasn't going more than like 10 feet up. But anyway, I digress. But this was definitely my first attempt at the high mountain. And I think, like most folks, I just never thought it within my realm of capability. Yeah. One, my access to it is pretty limited, non-existent really. And two, it's pretty expensive. So, through the process of, you're wonderful and you've been extremely helpful with this entire process. But for the folks who don't have access to people like yourself, there's the equipment you need to get as well. There's the travel. And so these things add up. So this is not a poor man's sport by any stretch of the imagination.
It's not.
So hence, I think that also contributed to the fact that it was such an accelerated experience for me, right? Because I was pretty much approached to be a part of the team last February, 2021. And then next thing I know, 2 weeks later, I was in Montana and Bozeman ice climbing with the team. And then we would have these team building events all around the country, just meeting everyone and kind of checking in, seeing how everyone's fitness was and how they're all progressing. And so, and then it was Nepal. One of our team building trips was Nepal in January of this year in preparation for expedition in April, May. So it's been a whirlwind ever since.
So what I'm super curious, as someone who like knew these big mountains existed, was I think curious about them. What was it like? You immediately when they approached you, like, yes, I can't wait to do this, or okay.
My answer was hell yeah. And it was interesting because the mountain was secondary to my thought process. Really what it was I was extremely excited by the opportunity to learn how to prepare for these kind of mountains.
Yeah.
And what it would take on my part, like what stretching I would have to do in my personal life to make room for a month and a half. I'm a business owner, right? So leaving your business for over a month and a half, I have never done that in the almost 11 years of owning my business. And so the amount of work and preparation and kind of evolution I would have to undergo and transformation for this to be possible was very exciting to me.
Yeah.
So the mountain was like it was secondary. It wasn't, and again, to do it with these folks was very important to me as well.
Yeah. And so of that, like, can I fit this into my life? What was your takeaway from that? I mean, obviously you did it, but like, was there any learning there? Any like surprises?
Yeah, I think it's one of the hard lessons you learn as a business owner is you are always the limiting factor, you know? and realizing the place, obviously, not that I thought the place would burn down or anything, but I actually came back and found it in better shape than when I left it.
Love it.
And that really speaks to the team that I've assembled. I mean, the entire thing, the team, there are a lot of parallels between having the right team, whether it be in your day-to-day work and on the mountain. And I've been super fortunate that that's been the case in both areas.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe like talk about that team a little bit. So Full Circle Everest, group of badass climbers with various backgrounds and experiences. You didn't know each other, right? Did you know? You knew maybe one?
Some of us, yeah, a handful. Yeah, and then if we didn't know each other, we knew of each other. Because, you know, the reality is Black and brown folks that do this at a high level are few and far between, unfortunately. So we knew of each other.
Okay.
At worst kind of vibes. And at best, we had already established relationships. So it made for a fairly smooth transition.
And I think you were also very thoughtful about these team building exercises, training sessions that you scheduled ahead of time. Because
so that was our team leader. So that I have to give full credit to the team leader. His approach around, and I think that was also one of the reasons I was drawn to this project, was that we didn't do from what my understanding is, you sign up for Everest and you're like, see you in 6 months or see you in 8 months, and you just turn up, right? Yep. Whereas we would have Zoom meetings every week, checking in on the progress of the project, and then we would have these physical face-to-faces every quarter. So yeah, every 3 to 4 months or so. Yeah.
Yep. No, I mean, kudos to Phil for doing that, because I think it's such a big deal.
Massive.
To really be a team when you show up at this camp.
Oh, so 100%.
We just, since we interacted from a training perspective, let's just chat about that for a little bit. So I always see my job as like, an athlete comes to me, they have this experience, you know, these skills, these injuries, this amount of time in their day. And over here, there's this mountain that they want to climb. And, you know, I'm fortunate that I most likely have climbed it. I understand the demands. And my job is to create this bridge to get the athlete from here to that mountain,
absolutely,
you know, 100% prepared. So your background was different than a lot of the people that I work with, because you have super solid background in rock climbing, which is fantastic, but hadn't climbed a big mountain before. And so we worked a lot. I felt like your strength, especially upper body strength, way off the charts, even from where it used to be for Everest. To me, it was about, and I would say the same about your core strength, it was about building endurance, getting you out there, like to do some squats and some hill sprints. I think you did some biking too. So it was that building your endurance and your tolerance for long days in the mountains. So it was going from, like you said, bouldering at 10,000 feet to actually multiple hours day after day at high elevation. And you also planned on your own some trips to South America.
I sure did. Oh, hi. That's Tramp Puppy.
Hi, Puppy.
Trampy.
He's doing his job.
Yeah, my little house alarm. Sorry.
No, it's totally fine.
I think I might be receiving a package or something. She usually does that when deliveries happen. There you go. I think it's done. Sorry about that. Go ahead.
So you also said, you know, there's this sort of regimented training, a training program. You have these team events going on, but you wanted to push yourself a little bit more and just see how your body reacted to elevation, which I thought was super smart. And to my surprise, I mean, you like killed it at elevation. You just genetically. Talk a little bit about that first trip to South America. I can't remember the peak that you climbed now, but
El Cerro del Plata. Do you want? Let me just, because this is
yeah. Go for it.
Let me sort her out. Tramp, what do you? barking at. Come on.
Aw.
Chill. Chill,
She's
baby.
good.
She really is. But... Oh, mi señora, ¿cómo estás?
Muy bien.
Okay, she's... Muy bien, mi señora. Estoy haciendo una entrevista. No, tranquila, tranquila. Contigo, si la puede... Sí, porfa. Deja la puerta abierta. So, that's my cleaning lady. She's like my mom. She takes care of me. Another reason for my success.
Yes.
The puppy was getting all excited because she realized she was at the gate. Sorry about that. Actually, I don't even call her my cleaning lady. I call her my domestic engineer. She's like so like next level.
Those
The amount of
people in our lives are so important.
massive.
Have a whole other conversation about that as a climber and how important it is
100%.
to have that support.
100%.
But so you planned this trip to South America.
I sure did.
And you just killed it. Like I remember talking to you when you got back and you were like, I need to work on a couple of things, but altitude wise, I felt fantastic. And I remember even looking at your heart rate, heart rate, just naturally as a response to the stress of being in elevation, their heart rate will increase. And yours was super low the whole time.
It was, yeah.
Girl is meant to be at elevation.
And that's been, I think, it's been such a confidence building like experience. And so one of the reasons I really pushed to go to elevation above the usual 4,000 meter mark that we have access to here in the US was because I didn't know. And so the last thing I wanted to do was find out in Nepal that really I have no business being up here, you know?
Yep.
And so it was important for me to have those experiences so that I can be informed and also come back to you and say, this is what I experienced. How do we fix this? And again, super fortunate that really the biggest perturbation for me is temperature. Like the moment my temperature goes up, my heart rate goes up like pretty wildly. But other than that, yeah, you're right. It's pretty chill up there. It feels good. It really, it really feels, I don't know how to explain it. It feels fine. Yeah.
You're meant to, from a climbing perspective, like you're just built, you know, sort of biologically, mentally, even, I think, to be at those elevations, which is, it makes you a super well-rounded climber, right? That you've got a very solid base in rock climbing. And you're also able to adapt quickly and climb at the highest elevations in the world. So super cool to me.
Yeah. No. And again, it's been super fun to be able to explore that with you. Right. And find out what these things mean, what these metrics mean. And I jokingly tell when folks ask me how, you know, because I would do things quickly. So like I was sharing with you, one of my first trips to Nepal, I landed, so obviously I live in Miami, negative 100 feet kind of vibes, you know. Flew to Kathmandu, and that's about, there are a little over 4,000 feet in elevation. And then because of timing and everything, we ran the risk, but I felt comfortable just because I'd had all of the South American experiences to just, they helied me from Kathmandu to Fort Say. And Fort Say is a beautiful village in the Khumbu, and it's just shy of 14,000. And I did all of that in the space of like 4 or 5 days, you know, including travel. So it's like, okay, let's go. And so that ability to do that, I think also comes from the fact that sure, it's nutrition, sure, it's hydration, sure, it's genetic. I'm sure all of those things play a factor.
Yeah.
But one thing I definitely jokingly shared with a friend was I think I've run myself into the ground so many times, so many different ways that when I am slightly off, I sense it straight away. And one thing that I did notice up in the high mountains, I did see a lot of folks falling apart. And I think I don't think it's because they're any less trained than I am or less strong than I am. I deeply believe it's because there were some signals, they didn't pay attention to them.
Yes.
And they pushed through. And I think what folks don't appreciate is that at elevation, the consequences are times 10. So
Yeah.
If I push myself at sea level, yeah, I might have a bad day the following day. At 17,000 feet, that you've just lost 4 or 5 days.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, because you have to recover. And so I saw that happen quite a bit around me. So that really helped inform my behavior as well. Like I really listened to my body.
I think it's so important to point that out to people. Not so to me, there's two main takeaways there. It is listening, right? Like being in tune enough with your body to know what is steady state normal.
Right.
What is I'm a little uncomfortable here, and what is like red flag,
Yeah,
like
100%.
we've crossed the red line.
Couldn't agree with you more.
But then you need the presence / lack of ego often to say, I got to take a break. Like I know my body and I know that I'm pushing too hard and I need to make these adjustments. And so much of that just comes from experience, right? Like, and I don't think that experience has to happen in the high mountains. I think it can be in any sort of physically demanding environment where you have to pay attention and you have to say something and do something when it's not right.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. And it is a practice. It's not something, you know, you literally, you know, necessarily grow up doing. It's something I've had to do for myself in my business, in relationship. And so, and then in my climbing as well, like climbing hard takes its toll. And so, you know, having played with that as well was, you know, you're always assessing risk. And that is from your well-being to the actual situation you find yourself in and so on. So you're absolutely right. But it is, I deeply believe, it is, I couldn't agree with you more. It's the act of listening, or the art of listening and the act of doing something. And if you pair those two things together, I think you'll have a very positive experience.
Yes.
I deeply believe that, because these landscapes are incredible. And I would love for more folks to realize the beauty that exists out there, you know? But yeah, again, and then as far as the ego bit, I've fallen so many times. If you're not falling, you're not climbing. Like there's no.
I know that's a rock climbing mantra. When my rock climbing friends have said that to me, I'm like, I don't know if it's like that in mountaineering. I think it might be.
No, oddly enough, obviously not. You all, I saw what you all are working with, so I don't blame you. But that idea, like the idea of it's never a failure. It's really, I'm practicing. So I see it as practice. Each exposure for me was an opportunity to practice. And then since I was fortunate enough to have someone like yourself to kind of show my work to, right? And say, this is what I have. What does this mean? How can, you know, I noticed this in this environment. I noticed some folks did well here, but struggled here. I did this. How can we, you know, and so like you said, covering that distance and building that bridge. And we did it fairly quickly too, because you and I started chatting end of September of 2021.
Yeah.
And then we got after it. Yeah.
I think it's also like that's an important thing to just keep in mind as well. That so I stress this with people no matter what they're climbing, what their skill level is. Every time you do a training hike, a training run, training session in the gym, it's an opportunity to learn, right? Like
Couldn't agree more.
It is practice. And so to me, that's what all this training is about. All preparation for the final test, which is when you climb whatever that mountain is.
Correct.
And if you're not like taking, you know, a lot of mountaineers spend a lot of time hiking and carrying heavy weight. If you are not taking advantage of getting your gear sorted out, checking your layers, thinking about hydration, trying different electrolytes, eating different kinds of snacks, you're missing a huge opportunity to train more against your physical body, but to get all those other systems dialed in that are so important on the mountain.
Couldn't agree. And that was something I learned with each practice. I was like, oh, wow, this is taking me a long, why is this taking me a long time? Oh, it's because I don't have my systems down, right?
Yeah.
It really is that simple.
I
And
didn't.
so, yeah. And usually, like I had mentioned earlier, the killer factor for me was always temperature. So realizing, so my tendency as a beginner in the higher mountains was I packed too much stuff in my. I didn't realize how hot I ran too. Like my system runs pretty hot,
Yeah.
and so I don't need all this junk. I really just need like a little bit of water, oddly enough, with the right electrolytes and a few layers and call it, and that's it. And but it took me a minute to figure that out.
Of course. Yeah. What else are there any? So so it's now the end of July.
Mm-hmm.
Looking back to Everest, what do you
Mm-hmm.
take away from that? Like, what did you learn? What do you hope
Mm-hmm.
to carry with you?
So I would say just because what we experienced as a team was, a little unique in that we had an entire film crew following us around.
Right.
The thing was getting documented. There was press. Like we all kind of arrived at the end of May, and I think the same week I landed from Nepal, like 2 days later, I was in New York doing press, on the Today Show. So it was like it's been nonstop. So I want to say these last couple of weeks um, have been nice because they've afforded me an opportunity to kind of process through conversations with folks like yourself and obviously with the people in my life and realizing some of the impact this has had and how that's exciting. But on a personal note, um, the biggest takeaway for me is you belong up there. Go find out.
Yeah.
Go get more experiences. Like now, I didn't realize, kind of like I had mentioned earlier around the lessons around my business. It's like, oh, I'm the limiting factor. And again, everything within reason. It's the same thing with this as well. Like the spectrum, I usually explain to folks that under this big umbrella of mountaineering, right, and alpinism, you start Everest, K2, and you work your way down. And somewhere you hit Yosemite, somewhere you hit a few multi-pitch, then you're on a single pitch sport climb. So now you have more access to difficulty, and then you have bouldering. But we're all in the same family. And I didn't realize that I didn't allow myself to look past a certain experience.
Interesting.
So, and again, there are reasons for it, and the things that I thought possible, I applied myself and excelled at. So, this part of the spectrum, I'm fairly comfortable in. This part, I don't have much experience in. So, it's opened up my perception around what is actually accessible to me, and so I'm really excited to kind of free that up for other folks, meaning I'm excited to acquire more experiences to bring that information back because I definitely think that I'm fairly well resourced and I found it challenging to enter this world.
Totally.
So I can't imagine the person for whom they see for the first time, it resonates with them. And there really is no first step, and so a clear first step.
Yeah.
And so I would love to help facilitate that for folks and have it be about the work. Like ultimately, I don't think it's just, are you able to do the work? And if you're okay with timeline, and this is where I think most people go wrong. I think most people overestimate what they can do in a year and underestimate what they can do in a decade. And so if you're okay with a broader timeline and doing this work, you can have some beautiful experiences, not just, and for me, success is having like a collection of these incredible experiences.
Right.
So, so I'm really driven to like get that info, and then just kind of demystify it for folks and have it be about the work and have it just be really, that information be accessible. What you do with it, that's your business, So.
Yeah, I think that is And I think that's a lot of what your team on Everest was about, right? Just making these beautiful places in the mountains more accessible to more people. It's definitely something that I aspire to do in my company as well, because for me, it's about everything that I've learned from the mountains, everything that I've gained personally from being there. I want that to be available to other people so that they can, like you said, take whatever, right? If it really resonates with you and it's something you want to push for, great. If it doesn't, great also.
Yeah.
But I think that we just have this collectively, these beautiful places in the mountains, and they should be more available to more people because there's
I
so
couldn't agree more.
gain.
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more with you. And again, even, you know, referring back to the draw for me in being a part of this project, it's even there's so much value in the preparation for these things. Like, just in the simple act of preparing for these things, not so simple, pretty demanding, but it makes you a better person, you know.
Yeah.
You're practicing something, and something that's really quite empowering. So if someone doesn't have necessarily like all of those resources to go to Nepal or to Pakistan or to Argentina or wherever else in the world you'd want to go, you can still engage in the practice of preparing, you know. And, you know, case in point, I live in Florida.
Totally.
You know, you have to use what you have. And I think if you are good at that practice of like utilizing what is around you to the utmost, more stuff comes your way.
Yes.
You know?
I think that's true literally and figuratively as well.
Yeah, totally.
Well, it's always such a pleasure. I feel like you and I get on these very deep conversations about climbing and the mountains, and I could go on and on. But what's next for you? So now you've got this amazing experience on Everest. So, like, what do you, and you're working now with Adidas, like, I want to follow you.
I'm really psyched on what resonates with me now that I'm kind of floating around in this world. I realize there, just like in rock climbing, there are like classic climbs, and there are, you know, things that people do. Oh, I tick this off. It's called ticking off a climb, right? And I think the same holds true in mountaineering. So none of those more traditional lists really resonate with me. Like one of my teammates is doing the 7 summits. And he's like, "Do you want to do it?" And I'm like, "Nah, that doesn't really." Do you know what I mean? That's somebody else's like.
Yeah, it has to be important to you. Yeah.
And so after some thought, I realized, really, because I value these different aspects, meaning the mental endurance, the physical endurance, and the technical ability, those kind of 3 components, I think that's what's governing my attraction to some of the mountains I'd like to climb moving forward. So Everest, obviously, everything is physical, everything is mental, technical, but there are different knobs, right? And each knob is turned up to a certain volume. So for me, Everest was more of a mental thing than a physical or technical thing. Still demanding, but I didn't, you know. I would love Lhotse I'd like to do like the top 3 tallest mountains in Nepal. I want to be in Nepal. I love the culture. I love the people. So Lhotse would be nice, because obviously that would be more of a physical demand. And then Kachinchunga, which is way more technical. Yeah. And so having that exposure, you know, like each mountain presents a different challenge, as you know. So exposing myself to each one, I think, at that high elevation, I think that would be really neat. And so, yeah.
Well, I have no doubt you can make it there. And it's been a pleasure just being a part of your process and helping you in whatever way that I can.
No, and it's been invaluable. Like I said earlier, Lisa, what you offer is an understanding of like how it's important to approach these things holistically, and that no matter, I don't care how good your training protocol is, if it's not integrated, it's not sustainable.
Yeah.
And so your ability to do that in a way that is, it's just very nurturing, very, very aware. So, and I think, I don't recommend folks getting ready for Everest in the space of like 4 or 5 months, but but having someone like yourself kind of going alongside with what I was doing made it very, made it a really fun process. It was, again, like I said before, super accelerated, but it was great. It was great. Yeah.
Such a joy. I'm going to stop the recording now if I can get there. Thank you so much, Abby.
No, my pleasure. My pleasure.